Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Module 7 of Strategic Management course. In this journey so far, we have understood what exactly is strategic management, what are the different perspectives of strategy, what are the different types and elements of a strategy. We are aware of strategic management process and strategic decision making. We are at a point where we know what exactly is strategic intent and what is the hierarchy of strategic intent. We know where our organization wants to go, that is, what is its vision. We know what are the products or services we deal in. We are clear that what will be our long-term and short-term goals and objectives. So for formulating strategy, now is the time when we should be aware of doing environmental analysis. In this complex and competitive world, it is very crucial to understand our environment, to stay competitive and to sustain in this environment. So now, with this we will move to our Module 7, which is Conducting External Environmental Analysis. In this module, we will be studying about various techniques and tools which can be used for scanning and evaluating our external environment. By end of this module, students will be able to understand the importance of external environmental analysis in strategic management. They will be able to identify the key components of external environment using frameworks like PESTEL and Porter 5 Forces model. They will be able to apply practical tools to analyze real-world external factors affecting businesses. And lastly, they will be able to use insights from the analysis to make strategic decisions and recommendations. To start with this module, it is important for us to understand what exactly is environmental analysis. Environmental analysis is a process of monitoring, evaluating, and disseminating information to key people in the organization. The main purpose of environmental analysis is to identify strategic factors. So when I am saying strategic factors, it means those factors which affect long-term and short-term decisions of a particular company. There are two categories of strategic factors, internal and external. Internal strategic factors are the one which are within the organization, which are our strengths and weaknesses. On the other hand, external strategic factors includes our opportunities and our threats. And that is the main purpose of doing environmental analysis. As you can see here, environmental analysis is divided into three components, which includes environmental scanning, environmental appraisal, and environmental evaluation. Now, what is the difference between these three? When we say scan is to basically monitor the environment. Here, we monitor the environment in order to identify what are the trends, patterns, or signals. For example, a change in government policy, emergence of new technology, change in taste and preference of customers. All these could be the trends in the environment. Scanning helps us to identify those trends and factors which could be crucial for the organization. Once we scan the environment, Second step is to understand that what could be the impact of those factors on our industry, whether it has a favorable impact or it has an unfavorable impact. That we get to know using environmental appraisal. So, environmental appraisal is a technique to identify whether the factors which we have scanned at an earlier stage have a favorable or unfavorable impact on our industry. So, for example, as part of scanning, we have identified that there is an emergence of sustainability. Sustainability is a new trend in the environment, and we belong to a manufacturing segment. Now, we have to see that whether those sustainability initiatives have a favorable impact on our industry or it is having an unfavorable impact. So, if government is levying out certain kind of taxes for those who are contributing to pollution, then it could be a certain kind of threat for us. So, we need to ensure that whether that particular trend is an opportunity for us or a threat for us, and that is why we do environmental appraisal. Once we do appraisal, next step is that we are required to evaluate our company that how are we responding to those external opportunities and threats. So, we have seen that we have identified a pattern or a trend in the environment. We have seen that that particular trend is a threat for us. So, as a company, what are we doing in order to respond to that particular threat? Are we taking steps in order to reduce our carbon emissions? Are we taking steps for proper rainwater harvesting? Are we taking steps for not polluting the environment? What kind of certifications do we have? What kind of ISO we have? All these things are part of environmental evaluation. So, repeating again, environmental analysis is done in 3 stages. First, we scan the environment to identify the trends or patterns. Then, we appraise the environment to see the impact of those patterns or trends on our industry to identify whether it is an opportunity or it's a threat. And lastly, we see how we can respond to that particular threat. What steps are we taking? For all these components of environmental analysis, we have different frameworks or different techniques. We will be discussing in detail regarding those techniques in this module and our next module. So, before starting with environmental analysis, it is important for us to understand what are the components of environment. Our environment is divided broadly into 2 categories: internal environment and external environment. Internal environment include those factors which are within the organization and which directly influence the organization decisions. It includes structure, culture, resources, men, material, machinery, all those things which are within the organization, they are part of our internal environment. Then we move to external environment. External environment include those factors which are outside the organization. They may affect directly or indirectly on the organization strategies. External environment is also divided into 2 categories: micro and macro. Micro is also known as task environment. For a company, its micro environment or task environment is basically the industry in which it operates. They are basically those factors which are outside the organization but affect short-term decisions of that particular firm. It includes all those components which are outside the organization but are directly related to our day-to-day operations. It includes our suppliers, labor unions, competitors, SIGs, trade associations, communities, creditors, government, customers, and all other shareholders. So for a company, I repeat again, task environment is the industry in which it operates. So when we evaluate microenvironment or task environment, we do industry analysis. Last component of external environment is macro environment, which is also known as general environment. They include those factors which are outside the organization and influence long-term decisions of the firms. It includes our political factors, environmental factors, legal factors, socio-cultural factors, technological factors, and so on. So this is the bifurcation of environment. For all these different components, we have different techniques of analysis. But before going to the techniques, it is important for us to understand that what constitute our environment. So I hope it is clear to all. Now, next thing which we are going to discuss about is SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is the summary of environmental analysis. For strategy formulation. Also, we call it as a summary of environment analysis. So once we do entire environmental analysis, once we get our internal and external strategic factors, we summarize them in form of SWOT and it becomes a basis for strategy formulation. We use our SWOT analysis for formulating our effective strategy. Now what exactly is SWOT? SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths, weakness belongs to our internal environment. Opportunities and threats belongs to our external environment. So, to explain, it is a framework for analyzing companies' internal and external environment and stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. When we say strengths, strengths are basically those inherent capacities which put organization at a strategic advantage. In simple terms, strengths are those areas where your company excels at. It could be your superior product quality, your innovative workforce, your huge financial resources, or whatever it is, whatever which is there within the organization and gives you certain kind of strategic advantage is what is known as your strength. Then we have weaknesses. They are inherent constraints which gives you certain kind of strategic disadvantage. In simple language, they are those areas where you lag behind your competitor, your unfavorable location, your inferior quality, your poor manpower. It could be anything, something which is within the organization and you lag in comparison to your competitor. That is what is your weakness. Then we have opportunities. Opportunities are favorable conditions in the environment which you can always capitalize. A change in government regulation, which is something which will help to increase the sale of your product. A new technology is there which you will use, your product sales will increase. Or there is sudden change in taste and preference of customers towards your product. So that is also an opportunity. So opportunity is from external environment which gives you certain kind of advantage if you capitalize on that particular thing. And lastly, you have your threats. Threats are unfavorable conditions which hamper or may damage your position. Emergence of new competitor, new technology which is making your technology obsolete, sudden change in government policy because of which your tax penalty has increased. It could be any factor outside the organization which is something unfavorable and can damage your position. Repeating again, once we do environmental analysis, we get our SWOT. Based on SWOT, we formulate effective strategy. Now, what is effective strategy? An effective strategy is one which helps to capitalize on the opportunity by maximizing the strengths, or which neutralizes threats by minimizing weaknesses. So basically what we do is we combine our internal factors with external factors to formulate the strategies, such as if you have certain strengths and opportunity, you combine your strengths with your opportunity, and what you form will be known as maxi-max strategy. That is, maximizing your strengths in order to maximize your opportunities. For example, there is a strength that you have huge financial resources, and there is an opportunity that you can tap into rural market. There is no other competitor in your industry who is present in that rural market. So using your financial resources, you can enter into rural market by creating your own distribution network is what is known as maxi-max strategy, which you have formed by combining your internal strengths and external opportunities. Similarly, if you have internal weaknesses and opportunities from outside, such strategies are known as mini-max strategy, where you are minimizing your weaknesses by taking advantage of opportunity. For example, there is an opportunity that a new technology is available. If you adopt that technology, it will help to increase sale of your product. That is an opportunity from external environment. Internally, your weakness is that you don't have that technology. So what will you do now? Will you drop the idea? No. What we will do? We will try to acquire it from outside. We will try to outsource it. We will try to enter into mergers or acquisitions with the company which is using that particular technology. We will try to convert our weakness into strength by removing our weakness by acquiring that technology so that we can capitalize on the opportunity which is available in the outside world. That is what is known as mini-max strategy. Next, we have strengths and threats. Now let us assume that your threats in the particular industry are that some recession or stagnation is expected in your industry. And your strengths is that you have innovative workforce. Repeating again, your strength is having innovative workforce. And your threat is that some stagnation is expected in your industry. Now, in this scenario, what we will do? Here, we will try to use our strength in order to minimize threat, and that is known as maxi-min strategy. That is, we will use our innovative workforce in order to diversify into a new product line, because in our industry, some stagnation is expected. So this is the time when we should diversify maybe into another industry that could be related or unrelated to your existing industry. For that diversification, you are using your strengths, which was innovative workforce. So therefore, we are naming it as maxi-min strategies, where you are maximizing your strengths to minimize or neutralize the threats. And last is combining your weakness and threats. Like your threat is same, that is some stagnation is expected in your industry, and your weakness is your high operating cost. Now what will you do? This is the time you have to play defensive. You will be required to follow a mini-min strategy. That is, minimizing your weaknesses to neutralize the impact of threats. That is what is mini-min strategy. So when your operating costs are very high and also some stagnation is expected in your industry, this is the time when you should focus on reducing your expenditure. Maybe you will go for downsizing, downscoping, or divesting your unprofitable products. You will take all these steps to reduce your operating costs and also to survive through that stagnation period. And that is how we use SWOT analysis for strategy formulation. Pearce and Robinson has given names to these strategies which we were discussing: the Maximax, Maximin, Minimax and Minimin. So the names given by Pearce and Robinson are that if we combine our strengths and opportunities, the name of the strategy is aggressive or offensive strategy. Herein, you will use your strengths aggressively to capitalize on opportunities which are available in the external environment. You will go offensive. You will be in attacking mode in order to capitalize on the opportunity available in your area. If there are weaknesses and there is an opportunity available in outside environment, you will try to convert your weakness into your strength. And that is what is known as turnaround. Turnaround means converting something negative into positive. So, in the example which we discussed earlier, where we were saying that we don't have that technology, but we want to capitalize on the opportunity. So, we will acquire it from outside, we will purchase it, we will outsource it. Whatever we are doing, we are trying to convert our negative into our positive. And that is what is turnaround strategy. The fourth strategy, when we combine weakness and threat, is known as defensive, wherein we have to play safe. We already have weakness and also some threats are there. We have to be in defensive mode. We have to protect our market share as much as we can. That is, we are going defensive. And last strategy is known as diversification strategies, when we combine our strength in order to neutralize the impact of threats. So what we do? We use our strengths to diversify into related or unrelated areas so that we can neutralize the impact of threats which are there in our industry. And that is what is the purpose of using SWOT analysis. Moving forward, if we find that our initial SWOT is unfavorable, that is, our weaknesses are more than our strengths or our threats are more than our opportunities, this is the time when we need to re-examine our SWOT so that we can convert our weakness into our strength to achieve a match with the opportunity, or threats into opportunity to achieve a favorable match between strength and opportunity. For example, if we talk about the case of HUL, we all know HUL is the first company which entered into rural market. Now, they were knowing that there is an opportunity to capitalize and to enter in rural market. But their weakness was they were not having adequate distribution network to serve rural areas. When you want to serve rural market, you need a very different kind of distribution network. So that was company's major weakness. What they did? They started with one of the famous Project Shakti, wherein they hired women from rural areas, provided them training with respect to sales and marketing, and created their own distribution network. So when you want to sell a product in rural market, if you will directly go, they are not going to purchase it. But people of their own is selling something or marketing something, they will develop that kind of trust and confidence. So that was a win-win strategy which was adopted by HUL, going for women empowerment, also capitalizing on the opportunity by creating their own distribution network. Similarly, if our threats are more than our opportunities, we need to convert our threat into opportunities. For example, if we talk about newspaper industry, what was the major threat for newspaper? It was internet. With emergence of internet, people stopped purchasing newspapers. So what this company did? Did they stop publishing? No. They used that internet and started with online subscription of newspapers. And that is what they converted their threat into opportunity to match with their strengths, which is their content. And that is what we do if our SWOT is unfavorable. Now, looking at the general or macro environment, as we discussed, our macro environment include those factors which are outside the organization and which affect long-term decisions of a particular firm. So for scanning our general or macro environment, we use the technique which is known as SLEP or PESTLE, wherein we evaluate our political, economic, socio-cultural, technological, environmental and legal factors. PESTLE is basically extension of SWOT with the additional of environmental factors. If you will see, all other factors are same: political, economic, socio-cultural, technological and legal. The only addition which was made to SLEP, making it PESTLE, is environmental factor because of increasing trend of taking care of the environment. So when we are saying political factors, what does it include? It includes political parties, ideologies, some kind of regulations, some kind of government policies. That will come under the political factors. Economic factors will include about our economy, the state of economy, whether it is boom, whether we are in some kind of recession, or what is the state of our economy. It includes our monetary policy with respect to our interest rate, exchange rates, inflation. All these are part of our economic environment. Socio-cultural factors include cultural values, norms, lifestyle, demographics. All these are part of socio-cultural environment. Technological factors include your innovation. Nowadays, a common trend is digitalization, automation. So all these are the trends from technological environment. Environmental factors include your carbon emissions, sustainability, and so on. On the other hand, legal environment will include your legal laws, regulations, certifications, and so on. So basically, when we do PESTLE analysis, our purpose is to evaluate our organization from point of view of all the external factors which are there in the outside environment. It can be our opportunity or it can be our threat. That we will evaluate at a later stage. But we need to understand that what is the trend, pattern, or any kind of signal which we can get to know by doing pestle analysis. I hope it is clear to everyone that how we conduct macro or general environmental scanning. Moving on to next, that is analyzing your industry or the micro or the task environment. For this, there is a very famous framework given by Michael Porter, which is known as Porter 5 Forces model. It includes analyzing 5 factors which are important components of a particular industry. So, company is required to analyze all these 5 factors to identify whether it's an opportunity or it's a threat. A higher force is regarded as a threat because it is likely to reduce the profits of the industry. For example, if bargaining power of suppliers or bargaining power of buyer is high, it is a threat for the industry, whereas a lower force is regarded as an opportunity. And that is how we do 5 forces model. Let's look at this model in detail. First is threat of new entrant. Whenever a new entrant enter, that company will bring a desire to gain market share, more capacity, more substantial resources. Therefore, they are regarded as a threat. Threat of new entrant depends upon presence of entry barrier. What exactly is entry barrier? Entry barriers is basically an obstruction which make it difficult for a firm to enter in a specific industry. Now, we have to see what can be different sources of entry barrier. One of the type of entry barrier is economies of scale. Economies of scale means when a company is producing in bulk, it is difficult for a new player to enter into that particular industry. Why? Because if new player will enter on a small scale, they will not be able to match the price which already established players are selling at. So they have to spend a lot in order to achieve that economies of scale. For example, company like Intel, Microsoft, they already enjoy economies of scale in their industry. So if a new player wants to enter, it is difficult for them to enter on that large scale so that they can achieve that per unit cost at which already established players are selling. So this is one of the major entry barrier which exists in certain industries. Second is customer loyalty. Customer loyalty means if already established companies have certain kind of loyal customers because of the product differentiation they have achieved, so that also act as a major entry barrier. Third, we have is capital requirements. If there is a company which requires huge capital to enter into a particular industry, that also act as a major entry barrier. For example, if any company wants to enter into airways, that requires huge investment, so that act as a major entry barrier for them. Next type of entry barrier is switching cost. What is switching cost? When it costs customer time, value and money in order to switch from one product to another is what constitutes switching cost. So who bears this switching cost? Company or the customers? This cost is borne by the customers. For example, everyone in a particular office is used to of working on Microsoft Office, which includes PowerPoint, Excel, Word. Now, if some new software emerge, then what will happen? The company has to purchase that particular software, which requires huge investment. They have to provide training to all of their staff so that they get equipped with that particular software, which will require time and other resources. So company will be discouraged to switch from using Microsoft Office to any other software. This is where we are calling it as switching cost, because in this industry switching cost is high. When switching cost is high, customers are locked with that particular product. That also acts as an entry barrier. Next type of entry barrier is access to distribution channels. If already established firms have access to distribution channels, that is, they have good network with their distributors, wholesalers or retailers, they have certain kind of sponsorships or certain other kind of network, it acts as an entry barrier for a new player. The new player will find it difficult to have access to distribution channels in that particular regard. So that is also a type of entry barrier. Then we have government policy. Government, through their policies, can always make it difficult for any firm to enter into any specific industry. Then we have expected retaliation. Expected retaliation means when you know that if you will enter into that particular industry, the existing players will retaliate, maybe by reducing their price, or by doing aggressive marketing. So their entry will be useless. In any industry, if you expect that there will be intense retaliation from existing players, that also act as an entry barrier. So these are certain entry barriers which make it difficult for a new firm to enter. So if entry barriers are high, threat of new entrant would be low in that particular industry. Let's take an example to explain it more. Assume you are in soft drink industry. What would be the threat of new entrant for your industry? So, for knowing the level of threat, it is important for us to understand that what will be the entry barriers in this industry. We all know that this industry is dominated by two major players, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. So, these players are already having huge economies of scale, which is the major entry barrier. If any new firm tries to enter, they have to produce in that quantity wherein they can achieve that per unit cost at which these dominant players are producing. So it makes an entry of another company useless in such kind of scenario. Also, they have certain kind of customer loyalty, that people will be hesitant to try another company's product if any new company come in this industry. They have access to distribution channels. Also, the expected retaliation would be high. So, all these are the entry barriers. Therefore, a new player will find it difficult to enter into such industry. So, if I am asking that what is the threat of new entrant in this industry, your answer should be threat of new entrant would be low because height of entry barriers are high in this particular industry. Now, let's talk about the second factor from Porter 5 forces model, which is bargaining power of buyers. Buyers can threaten industry by forcing down pricings or by bargaining for higher quality or more services. Bargaining power of buyers does not always mean that they will be bargaining for price. It could be when bargaining power of buyers is high, either buyers want low prices or better quality at same price. Now, in what kind of industry bargaining power of buyers would be more? When buyer purchase large proportion of seller's product. When numbers of buyers is few and they are dominant who purchase in bulk. So in that scenario, bargaining power of buyers would be more. If you go to market and you make bulk purchases, you also tell to shopkeeper that we are purchasing in bulk, so we want more discount. So when you purchase in bulk, when you purchase major proportions of seller's product, your bargaining power as a customer, as a buyer will increase. Secondly, when alternative suppliers are plentiful, if you want to purchase vegetable or fruits, there are large number of sellers who are there in that particular market. You can purchase from anyone because you as an individual will be single who is going to purchase in that market where there are large number of, that is, plentiful suppliers. So your bargaining power as a buyer would be more. Bargaining power, I am repeating again, does not mean that you will be bargaining only for price. It also means that if all of them are selling at same price, you will purchase from that seller who is selling you the best quality, right? So bargaining power of buyers means both low prices as well as better quality. Third point would be changing suppliers cost very little. That is, when your switching cost is low, when you can easily switch from one seller to another seller, there also your bargaining power as a buyer would be more. For example, if you want to purchase stationery, that is something which you can purchase from any shop wherever you are getting the best price or the best quality because switching cost is low in this particular industry. And lastly, when purchased product represent a high percentage of buyer cost, when you are buying something which is very expensive, be it a luxury car or a house or an expensive painting, something which requires a major of your income devoted to that particular thing, there also your bargaining power will be more. You will look around various places and finally you will be purchasing from that place where you get the best price or the best quality. That is what is second factor of Porter 5 forces model, which is bargaining power of buyers. Next we move to bargaining power of suppliers. It will be opposite in relation to bargaining power of buyers. So suppliers can always bargain by raising the price or reducing the quality of purchased goods or services. A supplier group will be more powerful when they are dominated by few companies but it sells to many. For example, Intel, which is one of the major players in microprocessors, it is a company which is selling to so many companies. So, their bargaining power is definitely high as a supplier. When product is something which is unique and has built switching cost, therein also suppliers' bargaining power will be more. And substitutes are not readily available. Example could be electricity. So their bargaining power is definitely more. So that is the third point in Porter 5 forces model. Moving to fourth point, which is threat of substitute. Now, what exactly are substitutes? Substitutes are those products, different products which satisfy a similar need. Tea or coffee, pen or pencil, they are different substitutes, different products satisfying similar need. Now, in what kind of industry threat of substitute would be more? Number one, when customer switching cost is low, when you can easily switch from one product to another product or from one substitute to another substitute, then threat of substitute would be high for that particular industry. Or when substitute product is cheaper and also it is of better quality. In all these scenarios, threat of substitute would be more. Let's take an example of newspaper company. Now, if you have noticed that newspaper price has not been much increased in last few decades, especially in line with rising inflation. Why? Because for newspaper companies, threat of substitute is very high. What is the substitute for newspaper? Maybe television or online news which is available. So, if we look at these points, switching cost of customer is low. You can easily switch from newspaper to mobile phone or television. The product is cheaper. It's almost free of cost because everyone is having TV, everyone is using mobile phone for other purposes. Internet is also free. So the product is cheaper and also it is of better quality. And that is the reason why we are saying that threat of substitute is high for newspaper industry, and that is the reason that why they have not been able to increase their price in line with rising inflation. Last factor in Porter 5 forces model is intensity of competition among existing firms. So the first thing which you have to understand is industry competitive structures, which refers to size and type of industry. What kind of industry we are in? Whether we are in fragmented industry where there are large number of players, or we are in consolidated industry where there are few number of players. So when we talk about fragmented industry where we have large number of players, here we will have more of price based competition. Why? Because the players will compete for same type of customers. When there are large number of players who are competing for same type of customers, definitely they will compete more on price basis. They will try to reduce the price in order to attract competitors' customers. So, price based competition would be more in fragmented industry. On the other hand, if we talk about consolidated industry where there are few number of players, therein competition will be there, but it will be non-price based competition, which means they will be competing with each other through marketing, promotions, aggressive campaigning, by adding more products to their portfolio. They will compete in all the manners except for price. And also when we talk about consolidated industry, therein you will see that there is certain kind of collusion of price. Collusion of price means the prices are usually same by all the companies. Though in our country, explicit collusion is banned. It is illegal. Explicitly, companies cannot decide the price of a particular product. But implicit collusion can happen, wherein you observe others and set the price of your product accordingly. So repeating again, if we talk about the intensity of rivalry, in case of fragmented industry, there will be price-based competition, whereas in case of consolidated industry, they will compete more on non-price basis. Second is switching cost. Now what do you think? When competition will be more? When switching cost is high or when switching cost is low? Price-based competition will be more when switching cost is low. Why? Because when switching costs are high, customers will be locked with that particular company. But when switching cost is low, you can always attract your competitors' customers. So in all those industries where switching cost is low, price-based competition will be more because you will try to attract your competitors' customers by reducing the price. Moving forward, the product or service characteristics. What kind of product are you selling? If you are selling something which is more homogeneous or standardized, then price-based competition will be there. In case of standardized product. But when your product is something which is unique, then there will be no price-based competition. And lastly, rate of industry growth. At what rate your industry is growing? Whether your industry is growing at a rapid rate or it is growing at a slow rate. What do you think? Where price-based competition will be more? Price-based competition will be more when your industry is growing slowly. Why? Because when you are growing at a rapid rate, at that time you have your own set of customers. You are not required to take away customers of your competitors. However, when you reach almost maturity or when your growth rate decreases, at that time you need to maintain your market share. So, you will try to attract your competitors' customers and price-based competition increases. For example, if we talk about Apple and Samsung in mobile phone industry, there was a time when Samsung was having its own set of customers. On the other hand, Apple was having its own set of customers. At that time, the industry was growing rapidly. They were having their own distinct type of customers. But when the growth rate of industry slowed down, they both entered into each other arenas. Samsung started producing expensive products in order to take away the customers from Apple. On the other hand, Apple came out with their low price phones of 4, 4S, which were comparatively priced lower in order to take away the customers from its competitor Samsung. So, repeating again, when your industry grows at a rapid rate, price based competition will not be there because you will have your own set of customers. Your focus will be on increasing your market share. But when your industry growth rates slow down, therein price based competition increases. There will be more pressure on you to take away competitors' customers. So, this is what the type of competition which we can see based on intensity of rivalry, which is the fifth factor of Porter 5 forces model. Now, let's take an example of athletic shoe industry looking at the 5 forces model here. If we talk about intensity of rivalry, what do you think? What type of industry it is? It is a consolidated industry where we have players like Nike, Converse, Adidas, and so on. So, here non-price based competition is there majorly based on the industry structure. That is, they compete by adding each other products, by marketing, promotion, discounts and other things. However, if we talk about the rate of industry has almost reached maturity, and that is the reason that why recently price based competition has increased. Therefore, we can say that intensity of rivalry is medium to high. Then we talk about threat of potential entrant. They depend on presence of entry barriers. As we discussed, that already there are barriers like economies of scale, customer loyalty, access to distribution channels. So, whenever there are high entry barriers, the threat would be low. Threat of substitutes. If we look at other things or the substitutes for athletic shoe industry, there are no substitutes basically. Other shoes will not provide the support for sports. So, the threat of substitute would be low because there are no substitutes. Now, if you think that you can purchase from Nike or Adidas or Converse, mind it, they are not substitutes. Substitutes means different products satisfying similar needs. So, practically there is no other substitute for athletic shoes. So, threat would be low. Looking at bargaining power of suppliers, now who are the suppliers for athletic shoe industry? Those who supply raw material or the factories where manufacturing is done, which is basically the outsourced one. So, definitely their bargaining power is less in comparison to the buyers because buyers are well established brands who are purchasing in bulk. So, their bargaining power as a supplier would be low. And lastly, bargaining power of buyers is medium to high because of more awareness among people, because having online as well as offline presence. So, buyers will purchase from that particular place where they are getting the best price and the best quality. So this is the way how we do 5 forces model for any industry. So with this, we will wrap up our session on external environmental analysis. I hope you all have understood about the techniques which we have discussed in today's session. In our next session, we will be talking about other techniques which can be used for environmental analysis. I will conclude with the quote that when the external environment change, strategy must change with it. The most successful businesses are not the strongest, but the most adaptable. Thank you everyone for your kind attention.
Hello, I am Professor A.K. Sharma and I teach sociology in IIT Kanpur. I am taking up a question, what is world population crisis? World population crisis refers to explosive growth of population which occurred during 1950s and 1960s. For millions of years, some people estimate that perhaps man appeared on this planet Earth 5 lakhs years ago. It took these 5 lakhs years for world population to reach first billion in 1820 AD, and that means that the population in ancient times must have been rising at rate 0.000 something percent per year. Now, in 1950s and 1960s in the world, you find that population started growing at rate more than 2% per year. This is what is meant by population crisis. You can imagine that if a population grows or anything grows at 2% per year, then in about 35 years time it can double. And obviously, particularly in the context of less developed countries, it had implications for poverty removal, for employment generation, for maintaining health, improving life expectancy, raising educational levels, etc., etc. The reason behind this population crisis was improvement in life expectancy or improvement in general health standards of populations. You may not be knowing, or you will be surprised to know that about 100 years ago in our country, life expectancy means average age of death or average age of life, whatever you say, of a newly born child was only 20 years, and today it has reached the level of 68 years. Improvement in less developed countries occurred, and therefore, with improvement in or average age of birth, average age population started growing at explosive rates, and people started. This is population explosion, or this is population, and now period of peak growth rate is over, and onwards in the world as well as in our country it started declining. Now, growth rate of India's population, currently India is 0.5% per year, and the reason is that sudden or unexpected health conditions in 50s and 60s which led to population crisis. Average number of children has also started coming down. Number of children per woman was around 11 or 12, and therefore, the growth rate of India's population 0.5%, and we can hope that in the future, even if nothing changes on the front of fertility or number of rate of population will decrease further, as said by the 11th 5-year plan of India. The cause of high growth rate of population is the age distribution of population. So, we have at the younger ages, and that rate of growth of population eventually, when population of India the developed countries, our growth rate will start falling. Thank you in the future.